Off on the far horizon, beyond the railroad yards and the great refinery tanks, lay our own private mountain range, dark and mysterious cloud and uninhabited, outlined against the steel gray skies of Indiana winter, the mills. It was the Depression, and the natives had been idle so long that they no longer even considered themselves out of work. Work had ceased to exist, so how could you be out of it? A few here and there picked up a day or so, a month at the roundhouse or the freight yards or the slag heaps at the mill, but mostly they just spent their time clipping out coupons from the black pages of True Romances magazine. Coupons that promised virgin territories for distributing ready-made suits door to door or offering untold riches repairing radios through correspondence courses. Downtown Homan was prepared for its yearly bacchanal of peace on earth and goodwill to men. Across Homan Avenue and State Street, the gloomy main thoroughfares drifted with snow that had lain for months and would remain until well into spring. Ice-encrusted, frozen drifts along the curbs were strung strands of green and red Christmas bulbs and banners that snapped and cracked in the gale. From the streetlights hung plastic ivy wreaths surrounding three-dimensional Santa Claus faces. For several days, the windows of Goldblatt's department store had been curtained in dark. Their corner window was traditionally a major high water mark of the pre-Christmas season. It set the tone, the motif of their giant Yuletide jubilee. Kids were brought in from miles around just to see the window. Old codgers would recall vintage years when the window had flowered more fulsomely than in ordinary times. This was one of those years. The magnificent display was officially unveiled on a crowded Saturday night. It was an instant smash hit. First nighters packed earmuff to earmuff, their steamy breath clouding up the sparkling plate glass, jolted in rapt admiration before a golden, tinkling panoply of mechanized electronic joy. This was the heyday of the seven dwarfs and their virginal den mother, Snow White. Walt Disney's seven cutie pies, hammered and sawed, chiseled and painted, while Santa, bouncing Snow White on his mechanical knee, ho-ho-hoed through 8 strategically placed loudspeakers, interspersed by choruses of hi-ho, hi-ho, it's all the work we go. Grumpy sat at the controls of a miniature 8-wheel Rock Island Road steam engine, and Sleepy played a marimba, while in the background, inexplicably, Mrs. Claus ceaselessly ironed a red shirt. Sparking artificial snow drifted down on Shirley Temple dolls. Flexible flyers and Tinker Toys sets glowing in the golden spotlight. In the foreground, a frontier stockade built of Lincoln logs was manned by a company of kilted lead Highlanders who were doubtfully fending off an attack by 6 U.S. Army medium tanks. History has always been vague in Indiana. A few feet away stood an Arthurian cardboard castle with Raggedy Andy sitting on the drawbridge, his feet in the moat, through which a Lionel freight train, burping real smoke, went round and round. Dopey sat in Amos and Andy's pedal-operated fresh air taxicab beside a stuffed panda holding a lollipop in his paw, bearing the heart-tugging legend, "Hug me." From fluffy cotton clouds above, Diana quintuplet dolls were wearing plaid golf knickers hung from billowing parachutes. Having just bailed out of a high-flying balsa wood Fokker triplane, all in all, Santa's workshop made Salvador Dali look like Norman Rockwell. It was a good year. Maybe even a great one. Like a swelling Christmas balloon, the excitement mounted until the whole town tossed restlessly in bed and made plans for the big day. Already, on my own scheme, was well underway my personal dream. Casually, carefully, calculatingly, I had booby-trapped the house with copies of Open Road for Boys, all open to Red Rider's slit-eyed face. My father, a great John reader, found himself for the first time in his life in alien literary waters. My mother, grabbing for her copy of Screen Romances, found herself cleverly eruched into reading a Red Rider sales pitch. I had stuck a copy of Open Road for Boys inside the cover, showing Clark Gable clasping Loretta Young to his heaving breast. At breakfast, I hinted that there was a rumor of loose bears in the neighborhood and that I was ready to deal with them if I had the proper equipment. At first, my mother and the old man did not rise to the bait, and I began to push, grow anxious, and of course, inevitably, overplayed my hand. Christmas was only weeks away, and I could not waste time with subtlety or droll innuendo. My brother, occasionally emerging from under the daybed during this critical period, was already well involved in some private little brother persiflage of his own involving an erector set with motor, capable of constructing drawbridges, Eiffel Towers, Ferris wheels, and operating guillotines. I knew that if he got wind of my scheme, all was lost. He would then begin wheedling and whining for what I wanted, which would result in nobody scoring, since he was obviously too young for deadly weapons. So I cleverly pretended that I wanted nothing more than a simple, utilitarian, unpretentious Sandy Andy, a highly symbolic educational toy popular at the time, consisting of a kind of funnel under which was mounted a tiny conveyor belt of little scoop-like gondolas. It came equipped with a bag of white sand that was poured into the funnel. The sand trickling out of the bottom into the gondolas set the belt in motion. As each gondola was filled, it moved down the track to be replaced by another, which when filled moved down another notch and endlessly then went dumping sand out to the bottom of the track and starting up back the loop to be refilled again, on and on until all the sand was deposited in the red cup at the bottom of the track. The kid then emptied the cup into the funnel and it started all over again, ceaselessly, senselessly, round and round. How like life itself. It was the perfect toy for the depression. Other kids in the neighborhood were embarked on grandiose pie-in-the-sky dreams of Lionel electric trains, gigantic Gilbert chemistry sets, and other totally unimaginable impossibilities. Through my brain nightly danced visions of 6 guns snapped from the hip and shattering bottles and a gnawing, nameless frenzy of impending ecstasy. Then came my first disastrous mistake. In a moment of unguarded rashness, I brought the whole plot out into the open. I was caught by surprise while pulling on my high tops in the kitchen, huddled next to the stove, the only source of heat in the house at that hour of the morning. My mother, leaning over a pot of simmering oatmeal, suddenly asked out of the blue, "What would you like for Christmas?" Horrified, I heard myself blurt out, "A Red Ryder BB gun!" Without pausing or even missing a stroke with her tablespoon, she shot back, "Oh no, you'll shoot out one of your eyes." It was the classic mother BB gun block. I was sunk. That deadly phrase, used many times before by hundreds of mothers, was not surmountable by any means known to Kittim. I had really booted it. But such was my mania, my desire for a Red Ryder carbine, that I immediately began to rebuild the dike. I was just kidding. Even though Flick is getting one, a lie. I guess I sure would like a Sandy Andy, I guess. I watched the back of her Chinese red chenille bathrobe anxiously, looking for any sign that my shaft had struck home. They're dangerous. I don't want anybody shooting their eyes out. The boom had been lowered, and I was under it, with Leaden heart and frozen feet, I waddled to school, bereft but undaunted. At recess time, little knots of kids huddled together for warmth amid the gray, craggy snowbanks and the howling gale. The telephone wires overhead whistled like banshees, while the trapeze rings on the swings clanked hollowly as Shorts and Flick and Brunner and I discussed the most important thing next to what am I going to get for Christmas, which was what am I going to get my mother and father for Christmas. We talked in hushed, hoarse whispers to guard against security leaks. The selection of a present was always done with greater secrecy than that which usually surrounds a State Department white paper and underground subversive operations in a foreign country. Schwartz, his eyes darting over his shoulder as he spoke, leaned into the wind and hissed, "I'm getting my father." He paused dramatically, hunching forward to exclude unfriendly ears, his voice dropping even lower. We listened intently for his punchline. "A new flint gun!" The sheer creative brilliance of it staggered us for a moment. Schwartz smiled smugly, his earmuffs bobbing jauntily as he leaned back into the wind, knowing he had scored. Flick, looking suspiciously at a passing female first grader who could be a spy for his mother, waited until the coast was clear, and then launched his entry into the icy air. "For my father, I'm getting..." Again we waited, Schwartz with his superior smirk playing faintly on his chapped lips. "A rose that squirts." We had all seen these magnificent appliances at George's candy store, and instantly we saw that this was a gift anyone would want. They were bright red celluloid with a white rubber bulb for pocket use. At this point, luckily, the bell rang, calling us back to our labors before I had to divulge my own gifts, which I knew did not come up to these magnificent strokes of genius. I had not yet made an irrevocable choice for my mother, but I had narrowed the field down to two spectacular items I had been stealthily eyeing at Woolworth's for several weeks. The first was a tasteful string of beads about the size of small walnuts, brilliant ruby in color with tiny yellow flowers embedded in the glass. The other and more expensive gift, $1.98, was a pearl-colored perfume atomizer, urn-shaped with golden lion's feet and matching gold top and squeeze bulb. It was not an easy choice. It was the age-old conflict between the classic and the cyberatic, and that is never easily resolved. For my father, I had already made the down payment on a family-sized can of Simonize, one of my father's favorite proverbs. One he never tired of quoting was, "Motorist-wise, Simonize." He was as dedicated a hood shiner as ever bought a fourth-hand Graham Page, with soaring hopes and bad valves. I could hardly wait to see him unwrap the Simonize on Christmas Eve with a light of red, yellow, green, and blue bulbs on the tree, making that magnificent can glow like the deep flush of myrrh and frankincense. It was all I could do, a constant tortured battle to keep myself from spilling the beans and thus destroying the magnificent moment of stunned surprise, the disbelieving delight which I knew would fell him like a thunderclap when he saw that I had gone all out. In fact, several times over the supper table, I had meaningfully asked, "I bet you can't guess what I got you for Christmas, Dad." Once, instead of saying, he answered by saying, and we'll continue this reading on another day.